too fast. I'm taking three.
I'm going for the St. Louis now.
Oh no!
Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course. And today we are going to take a look at two replays. The first replay, you'll notice I am grouped up with Cannibal. We have seen Cannibal before on the channel with some of the replays that have been submitted. And it was just by chance. I forget what game. I think it was in my Bismarck, and Cannibal was on the other team. It said hello and whatnot, and then afterwards sent him an invite, or he sent me an invite, and yeah, played a few battles. More importantly, though, the ships we're in. Deadly combination to have a Chapiev and a Kutsov in a division working together, and I really do think there's a real value and a whole lot to be said about a Chapiev and a Kutsov working together. Because you go from, what is that, 3, 6, 9, 12, you go from 12 guns to 24 guns. They are rapid fire. They're fairly accurate. I mean, the Kutsov does have a higher arc than higher firing arc than the Chapiev, or trajectory, I should say, not firing arc, trajectory. Yes. Whereas the Chapiev's a little flatter and easier to aim with, but you still have, crazy chances of setting fires, doing a whole lot of damage. Then you throw in the smoke ability of the Kutsov, and yeah, amazing. Because the smoke ability and I guess the radar of the Chapiev, amazing. You can do a whole lot of things with these two ships working together. The Kutsov itself still has 8-kilometer torpedoes, so I mean you do have some fairly good defensive torpedoes on board, and the Chapiev, the last-ditch all-out 4-kilometer torpedoes that don't do a whole lot of damage, but they're there. The AA of the Kutsov or the Chapiev individually with the defensive fire ability, running, or defensive AA fire on, is amazing. It is really good, and you are going to shoot down a good number of planes. Now in this battle we don't have that to worry about, but still worth mentioning. Now, if you decide to deck out the AA on your Chapiev or Kutsov, it will be amazing. On my Kutsov, it is an AA build. I didn't really focus too much on the guns themselves, other than making sure that that the guns had Demolition Expert and maybe some modules there. But for the most part, no. On my Chapiev, I do have the guns decked out entirely, as opposed to the AA. I mean, the Kutsov has some amazing AA on her own, but once you, buff it a little more, it's fantastic, really. Anyway, we are pushing and harassing the northern point, the C point up here. You'll see that my team was incredibly quick in snatching up A and B without too much of a hassle. I mean, B is being contested right now, but A is more or less ours without too much struggle. Up here at C, though, we are, facing some enemy resistance, and if you look at the minimap and you notice that, well, A and B is already capped, even though B is contested, we don't necessarily need to take C. All we need to do is to prevent the enemy from gaining any points from the C cap zone, right? Just stall them on their cap as long as we can, and the whole idea here is just to buy our allies time in the south who are working their way towards B to clear that up, and as well now those allies at A do have some opposition and need to defend A, right? So that's really all we're doing, because at this point in time no one is gaining any points anyway. It's just a matter of who's going to be able to kill whose ships quicker. And that's really what you do want it to come down to in these domination game modes. It is all about the caps, and the caps will dictate, what you are doing in the battle, or at least it should anyway. So, you don't want to take too many chances, but you also really do want to have the situational awareness to recognize these sorts of situations. And I mean, if you look again on the minimap, my allies up here at C, we're not pushing into C or anything like that. Myself and Cannibal, right, we're just sort of sitting in the background right now, just harassing these enemies, just preventing them from completing the cap and from actually gaining any points from this. And you can see it has been working off for us. I mean, we have destroyed a few enemy ships up here. We are doing a pretty decent job of harassing them, and in fact we might even be able to move in shortly. Our allies at A and at B have secured their cap zone, so we are now in fact gaining points from those two zones. So yeah, everything is working out really, really well. For us anyway. Not for that enemy cruiser, unfortunately. Now, the Russian cruiser line, I've talked about it quite a bit, but it is a great cruiser line, and I'm pretty convinced that I'm going to go back and buy my Budyani at tier 6. I did sell the Budyani. I kept, the shores and the shores onwards, but I'm going to go back and get that Budyani because that thing is pretty decent at tier 6 as well. Especially considering, because I mean, I'm done the ARP missions now, so don't really have to worry too much about port slots, because I had all the ARP ships anyway, so I just got all port slots for it, so it's amazing. I think I have like 14 port slots now. Anyway, bit of a concern here on the starboard side of the ship with the Warspite. Now, as great and as awesome as the Russian cruisers are, they all suffer from the same thing. They have pretty high citadels that are, really not protected at all, and it is very easy to look at a Russian cruiser, and maybe you won't, kill it in that first salvo, but you are going to do a bunch of damage, pretty much every salvo, and the Russian cruiser is going to go down very, very quickly. This is why the Russian cruisers themselves do excel at range, especially, we've talked about it before, in a mid-range Overwatch position. Now, with myself and Cannibal working together like we are, it's fairly easy, I guess, to do like a pretty decent push with the two cruisers, as opposed to, reserving ourselves to the Overwatch position. Plus, recognizing the situation, using our situational awareness, we can see that, we should really get in here and, continue the prevention of C and maybe even cap C now for our team. Because, I mean, the enemies do have A, and they are making some moves towards B. So we want to keep this in mind. Now, I do really want to get this Warspite on fire, right? Trying to do something and just keep the, maybe split his attention, rather, between myself and Cannibal, right? That would be ideal. Now, unfortunately, I did circle and sail right out of the cap zone, but whatever. We'll just turn ourselves back in, and it does open up the possibility now to potentially do something about this destroyer. So my radar is on cooldown now, but only maybe 10 seconds or so left, so it should be back fairly shortly. So if I do lose contact with this destroyer, or if the destroyer pops smoke, I'll be able to maintain that contact if need be. And that's something worth mentioning as well, with your radar, your defensive fire, defensive AA fire, your smoke, and all that lovely stuff. Really make sure before you pop that stuff that it's actually needed, right? I've noticed it myself. I do it often enough, and I'm trying to recognize when I do it and prevent it from happening. But I have the tendency of, I'm in a cruiser with radar and I see a destroyer, and it's like, oh my god, pop my radar right away. That's not right. You have radar, and that's fantastic, but I should be waiting, and people who do it as well, I'm sure there's others, once the destroyer breaks contact with us and we no longer see the destroyer, but we know the destroyer is still pretty close, that is when we need to pop the radar. Same thing with the smoke, right? I'm not spotted, and I think with the smoke too, I'm pretty good with it, except for my British cruisers, working on that still. But, I'm not spotted, and so I shouldn't be popping the smoke. It shouldn't be a matter of, oh my god, there's an enemy ship, I've got to pop my smoke. It's waiting and recognizing, using your situational awareness to make sure that, you're actually doing what you should be doing, given any sort of certain situation. And working on it. It doesn't always happen, but I definitely recognize situations where I do it, and it happens, and it's like, oh, well, that's kind of a waste now. It's useless. Anyway, we managed to take out the Warspite, which is fantastic, and unfortunately, once again, I sailed right out of the cap zone. I really wanted to stay in there and actually get some extra points. I mean, myself and Cannibal haven't been doing too bad this game at all. And we were talking about it as well. A lot needs to be said about the team we have. This is a great team. These people, especially the people who were at B and at A, I mean, I know a lot of them did, get sunk and go down, but those individuals did manage to sort of group up or regroup and take back those 2 points. I mean, we have all 3 points now. Ourselves up here at C, we did a good job as well. I mean, obviously preventing the cap of C, leading to the overall capture of C for ourselves, which, not too bad. There's only 3 enemy ships remaining. We do have an enemy Thotgor out there in the distance. Now, I still want to play it careful. That Thotgor has 8-inch cannons, and if he's firing armor-piercing at me, can really rack up some damage. And in fact, we can see the player is firing armor-piercing at me. Now, I do have some terrain in front of me, so unfortunately I have to turn in, and that is not very good indeed. Yes, lots of damage there, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. You really do have to be careful with your Russian cruisers, and I didn't use proper situational awareness in that moment there to know that I should have turned the other way around the landmass to make sure that I wouldn't be in a position to have a broadside exposed to the Thotgor with the armor-piercing rounds. Now, luckily for me, working together with Cannibal in the Kutuzov, Cannibal just swoops right in here and starts taking some of the pressure off me and helping me out with this Thotgor here. Now, we do set the Thotgor on fire, which is fantastic, and we're almost dead, but it doesn't really matter because we should be able to, sail away from the Thotgor, kind of angle ourselves as well against the shots, right? Dodge them as best we can, and we should be okay. So there we go, more fires to the Thotgor. We can see the Thotgor is almost down, so someone just has to fire in there and finish the player off, and we should be pretty good to go on our victory and surviving the battle, which isn't too bad at all. Everyone likes to survive. But yeah, again, my team did a great job this battle, right? And it's because the team did such a good job during the battle in taking, defending, and retaking the A and B point that provided us up at C the opportunity and the time to sort of just harass the enemy at C as much as possible to make sure that they would not be able to cap the point. And it worked out pretty well for us. Pretty well indeed. So battle is over, victory is ours, 77,000 damage, we can see 223,000 credits, 4,100 experience, which is, great, not too bad. But in terms of the overall listings, we can see that there are a number of people on my team that are well over the 1,000 experience mark, right? And so a lot of us, you can see on the team, really did great jobs there. Some of the damage and how it's broken down, obviously did a number of fire damage to that Warspite, which was great because the Warspite, could potentially have just killed us all. When all is said and done, I do end up walking away with about 73,000 credits, which is not terrific, but not too bad at all. Not terrific, but yeah, I'll still, I'll take it. I'll take it. So moving into the next clip here, we can see we're with Salazar, and he's in his Bismarck. So Salazar sent me this replay a few days ago, wanted to make sure I got it up because it is a pretty phenomenal game in the Bismarck. The Bismarck is the ship that just keeps on giving. I love this battleship. It is really, really fun just to sort of play around, derp around in. And we can see that Salazar has his Ocean Soul camo, I think is what it is. This is such a weird looking camo, isn't it? But whatever. I have a bunch of them myself. I got quite a few from super containers and stuff. So I do fly them or use them on my British cruisers, yes. Because I'm pretty sure, I haven't actually played ships in 2 days. 2 days, yeah, almost 3 days. I'm going to play some tonight, which I can't wait for. But I have had a number of holiday parties to go to, and it just ruined me for those 2 days. Recovering today, I only woke up today at 3:30 in the afternoon. Yes, I mean, granted, I was up until 5 this morning, but still, it's gonna be good to get some ships on. Can't wait for it. Yeah, Ocean Soul camo. So it looks strange, I found, on the Bismarck, right? It kind of makes it look like, the first thing that came to my mind was a clown car, but I know a lot of people call it prison stripes and whatnot. Speaking of camos, I really want to get some of those tier 10 camos put on my tier 10 ships because they will give me a greater chance of making more money, which is phenomenal. Now, I think it's about 5,000 gold to have it placed on there. It's a little steep, but I might have to do it. I'm just, it'll just take time. As I buy different things and I get gold for those purchases and whatnot, I'll just have to save up my gold, and when I reach the 5,000 mark, go ahead and buy it. But yeah, it does a number of different things for your tier 10, but most importantly, you have a higher chance of earning credits, which is just phenomenal. So really want to take advantage of that. Anyway, getting into the replay, we're on the same map, and we're doing sort of the same thing in that we are up here at C. Now, this time, this team was maybe not as good. Obviously, Salazar had to carry pretty hard certain times in this battle, but still, they were good enough. That, sort of the beginning movements of this team is to really focus on 2 points, which is always a good play. Always a good play. I think it's a really safe play, and it really makes sense to do because, you're not splitting up your forces too thin, but you're still making sure that you're giving yourself the option of, potentially getting in there and taking some caps quickly, and, starting to rack up some points here against the enemy. And ideally as well, what you're doing there is you're getting some good positioning, because you do want to have good positioning on any map when you are, opening stages of the battle. If you can get a better position than what your enemy has, you're going to be doing pretty good. Now you can see Salazar had his high explosive loaded up for the opening stages of the battle, and that's usually because generally the first things you're going to see is destroyers and battleships. If they can get some shots of their some high explosive shots into a destroyer, it usually does some pretty decent damage. But anyway, we've switched over to armor piercing because Kutov, this poor Kutov. It's never a good idea for, and we talked about it actually in the last battle, for a Russian cruiser to just, sort of storm in here all willy-nilly and attack something. And you can tell, I can tell that this player, what the player is trying to do is get into torpedo range, and probably the idea behind it is I'll launch off my torpedoes, pop my smoke, and just burn the Bismarck down. That's maybe what's going through that player's mind. This is wrong. Totally wrong for a number of reasons. Mainly, you're a Russian cruiser and you have no armor, and we can see some torpedoes being fired now. But your torpedoes are not an offensive weapon. They are not. The ideal situation for those torpedoes is either you're setting up an ambush on an enemy ship, that really isn't going to have the option of avoiding them, or you're in your smoke and you have some enemy ships bearing down on you, right? That's when you're using your torpedoes on your Kutov. Just because they can go 8 kilometers doesn't mean you should be setting yourself up to fire those torpedoes 8 kilometers, it targets 8 kilometers away all the time. You will die very, very quickly. Anyway, stock Fuso off in the distance, and that's something that I noticed too about this game. Tier 8 is the highest tier, but there are a number of 6s in this game, which make it hilarious. So, stock Fuso fighting off against a Bismarck, and we can see a Magi, and a Magi that's, fully upgraded off there in the distance, and the poor Fuso has torpedoes on the way for it, so it's just not going to work out for this guy. Man, hilarious. Anyway, Salazar's team has managed to take the the C cap zone without too much struggle at all, and it looks like for the most part the enemies are concentrated at B and A. So we're pretty good up here at C. We don't really have to worry too much about, leaving a large contingent to protect this point. So we're pretty safe in actually pushing down and trying to deal with some of these enemy ships, right? Now, a lot of pressure on, there is a lot of pressure when you're in these battles and you're the battleship, and by these battles I would mean, Tier 8, top tier, but there's a lot of Tier 6s. So there's a lot of pressure on those Tier 8s in the battle to actually pull their weight and to do a whole lot to make sure that the Tier 6s don't die too bad. Really important, in fact. And Salazar is going to do just that. We can see that we did just manage to get a nice citadel on the Amagi there off in the distance, which is not too bad at all. We're closing the distance, in fact, with some of these battleships, right? Trying to get ourselves in a better position to make sure that, you know, we're utilizing all the advantages that we have of the Bismarck, which secondary battery, pretty powerful primary battery as well. I mean, the primary battery, like all German battleships, isn't as accurate as some may want or hope, but when it does hit, it hits like a train, and it is pretty damn amazing. We do see an Allied destroyer here in front of us who has just popped smoke, and this opens up an excellent opportunity for us to get ourselves into the smoke, you know, hopefully and potentially break contact altogether with these enemy battleships while continuing to pump shells into them. That would be amazing. So we're going to get into the enemy, or to our Allied smoke here. We're going to turn ourselves, and we're going to get some broadsides off, hopefully at some enemy ships here, right? So we do still have the enemy Amagi off in the distance. We're coming to a slow stop here. Hopefully we'll still remain in the smoke and unseen. We can see that our Allied destroyer is in here as well, and hopefully the Allied destroyer, you know, is going to have some torpedoes ready for any enemies that happen to pop up. There we see an enemy Colorado, so we're going to get ourselves out of this situation, obviously, because we do have some torpedoes coming in, but there we go. They run out and we are safe. Excellent. I gotta tell you, there's no better feeling to know that you're about to die from these torpedoes because there's nothing you can do about it, and then they run out. It is amazing. We see an enemy Myoko here off in the distance, fairly close to us. Our secondary battery is engaging the player, which is great. We just need to reload some of our guns, and then we can pump some armor piercing into the side of the enemy Myoko. And this is another thing that you know, we really need to pay attention to, Myoko drivers and captains. Now that we have all of these ARP ships in the game, there are a whole lot of people. In fact, everyone should have like a Myoko class cruiser, and maybe even a Thotgor now. Need to be very, very careful with these cruisers. They are not, again, with the torpedoes that'll go 10 kilometers, those torpedoes should not be an offensive weapon for you. They should not be the top of your mind when you're, you know, engaging enemies trying to get into torpedo range so you can fire them off. The Japanese cruisers do very well at mid to close range, but mid is really, really what you want to stress with your Japanese cruisers. That is where they're going to excel. The torpedoes are best kept as, you know, defensive and setting up for ambushes. It makes it easier to set up for ambushes because they go 10 kilometers, but you really do want to use them in that capacity. Massive damage there to the enemy Colorado. That player did not see our shells coming in at all. And in fact, the Colorado still isn't focusing on us. There we go. We managed to finish off the enemy, I believe it was the enemy Myoko, though I'm not 100% sure, but still, player's gone. Fantastic. More shots going into the enemy Colorado. There we go. Enemy Colorado is gone with another citadel, which is great. We're sitting on about 119,000 damage at this point in time, so that's not too bad. We go ahead and repair our fire. You can see that we're going to start healing some of our health as well. We do have an enemy ships fairly close in front of us, but we are going to try and focus on the enemy ships that we can do the most damage to. There's an enemy destroyer, so we really do want to do something about this enemy destroyer. Really not a good idea to have an enemy destroyer, you know, very close in front of you. It's a Fubuki. Fubuki's already launched all of its torpedoes, and you know, we're going to be able to avoid all of those, so we don't have too much to worry about that. It's just a matter of making sure, you know, that we have someone on the enemy Fubuki to make sure that this player goes down. But again, the strength of the Bismarck with the secondary battery, right, and the shots that do, when they do hit, do a whole bunch of damage. So there we go. Enemy Fubuki is gone. Get ourselves a nice close quarters expert. That's fantastic. We're angling against the enemy battleship that's in front of us while focusing on the enemy cruiser off in the distance. Now this is simply because that enemy cruiser off in the distance is going to be able to keep us on fire, and it's the fire that is really going to bring our health down, right? We do also want to make sure that we are doing something about the enemy battleship here in front of us. So there we go. Ram the enemy battleship, and in doing so get ourselves a nice high caliber Confederate and our 5th kill for the Kraken. Yes, and we have left our team in an excellent position to just be able to mop up the enemy ships that remain and pull off a nice victory. Yes. An excellent battle indeed in the old Bismarck. And you can really see, I mean, this battle here, fairly quick, I suppose, whatever, but still, we can see the strength of the Bismarck, right, at mid to close range. Caution, I mean, just because the Bismarck does excel really mid to close range, doesn't mean you want to get yourself into close range as quick as possible, right? We saw what Salazar did basically the entire time is he's, you know, if multiple targets are in front of him, he's angling his ship against as many of those targets that's in front of him as he possibly can, and he's working down the ships that are of the greatest threat to him, which is going to be your cruisers and your destroyers. Now, if there were no cruisers and destroyers in front of him, then he's taking shots off the battleships, and I mean, we saw how effective that was, especially against those last two. But still, you know, very important to keep all of this in mind, and it really just sort of brings it back down, or brings it back to situational awareness, right? We really want to maintain our situational awareness as much as we possibly can, ideally at all times in the battle. It's really, really important, and it is going to pay off for us. And we can see that with, you know, the two battles we saw today and their overall result of victory. Now, I didn't get any screenshots with the replay, so I don't have any of the final screens or anything like that to show you guys, which is unfortunate, but rest assured, there were some great things going on with experience, credits, and overall results. Anyway, that is the end of today's video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. You know, as always, remember to leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Hit subscribe if you are not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.